So 2011 was the first year that the National Student Survey included a question for all final year participants. How satisfied are you with your students' union? In 2012, we achieved a satisfaction rating of 68% on the question. The results from this year indicate we've achieved a 3% improvement, moving from 68% to 71% of students taught at Staffordshire University expressing satisfaction with the union. We've also seen the percentage of respondents reporting dissatisfaction fall from 9% to 7%, all of which is the direction that we obviously want to be taking. But this still remains an area for us to address further, as 7% of those students would actually translate to 1,400 of our 20,000 students who aren't satisfied by the work that we did last year. Whilst this gives us an external perspective on our performance as a union in satisfying our members, we also described our vision last year of reaching a point where every student could be proud to be a part of STAFS. In order to measure how well we are progressing with this aim, during our Big R survey that we did at Easter this year, we were able to survey our membership, getting over 1,500 respondents. 9 months into our 5-year strategic plan, we found that 73% of our students identified as being proud to be part of STAFS, which is obviously fantastic. This is effectively our starting point and what we want to build on and remeasure year on year. To make this progress, we have been acting on 5 strategic strands for our students, each of which has been championed by an officer of this year's team going forward. These are Knowing You Better, championed by Kris, Engaging You More, which is Alice's responsibility, Ensuring You Are Well Served lies with Deo, I'm responsible for developing you as students, and Mel celebrates your successes. So moving to Knowing You Better firstly. Off the back of analysis of both the Student Viewfinder and NSS survey, we were able to provide the university with a blueprint document representing students' views to bring about change. This was presented to the university executive team last year and has been taken on board by the university senior leadership team for action. 8 months on, we have the latest SVS and NSS feedback and are working on an updated blueprint to show the university where improvements have been recognised but where actions also do still remain outstanding. Another key piece of research undertaken by us last year was the student housing survey. That says the big R's, ignore that. The student housing survey. The results of that survey have been presented to both the university as well as local councils in both Stoke and Stafford, and have also been taken on board by the UniQ group, which is based in Stoke. Some of the issues that were identified in that survey have led to the development of the Green Pad project, which we've created, which I will come on to later. This year will be focused on continuing to get smarter about how we capture and analyse the huge amounts of information available to grow our understanding of students' needs and to look at how and where we share that information with you so that you're more aware of how we make decisions and the way that your input actually shapes and informs the decisions we make. A good example of this is with the changes that the university are making to the 24-hour library provision. Having secured 24-hour library operation in 2009, since then, obviously, the university has squeezed department budgets in the 2013-14 year. This has meant the library have been faced with some tough choices about where it spends that budget. Having looked at usage data, which is listed over there, the university proposed to cut back on its 24/7 opening hours, which is obviously the alternative and less desirable option. The university proposed to cut back on its 24/7 opening hours, as opposed to the alternative and less desirable option of reducing the new book fund for the library. In consultation with union officers over the summer, the university did agree to retain 24/7 for 12 weeks running up to the key hand-in and assessment and assignment hand-in dates. Obviously, as a union, we know that students still have concerns over the decision to reduce those hours, so we have been lobbying and bringing it up at every single board that we've been to make sure the current situation does improve for students. Moving on to Engaging You More. A big focus for 2012-13 was becoming much more targeted about how we communicate with our students. This has involved developing messages that are more focused around groups of students rather than hoping that a single message will convey the right information to all. In this way, we aren't telling distance learning students in Glasgow what a great night they're going to have at Stafford, or telling postgrads about accessing bursaries that they actually aren't entitled to getting. This is something that we're going to be continuing to develop as a union this year and improve on in the year ahead. We've actually got two versions of our members' handbook this year as well, which means that we have like tailored messages delivered to two different groups of students, which is brilliant. The leadership race also showed what could be achieved as well with more customised communication, as well as the engagement of our whole staff team. Having set a target to increase student participation from 5% in 2012 to 15% in 2013, we got within a whisker of this by getting 14.1% of students engaging and electing their officer team. We set ourselves a challenge on building on this engagement in the coming year to make sure that at least 20% of students feel that they can engage with the leadership race. Last year, we also introduced a number of student-led forums that brought together students from a range of different backgrounds of the membership. This includes Black and ethnic minority students, women, and also Stafford students as well. In the coming year, we're taking this one step further. We've introduced student-led forums with student panels to pass and broaden the students' involvement in actually setting policies, union governance, and also deciding what we do as your students' union. Last year, we significantly also increased our active uni participation levels with 856 students and staff also participating in sporting activity without committing to joining a sports team. This is on top of our established clubs and societies programme. Last year we had a really amazing and big renewed focus on enabling and empowering students to set up their own groups, and we actually saw 28 new startup groups established, which was fantastic. We also engaged 2,225 students as members of student groups, with more course-related groups developing with little or no cost to join. As well as extracurricular activities, our students have been brilliant in engaging with their academic experience. Last year, we supported 280 stars into post across 4 newly formed faculties and have had some key wins for students supporting the changes that they have brought about. Last year also saw a significant rise in students engaging in the Student-Led Teaching Awards. The number of nominations recognising staff for their positive impact on the student experience rose from under 100 to over 318 individual nominations, which was obviously absolutely astounding for us. Moving on to ensuring that you as students are well served. By moving our advice centre from an appointment-only service to flexible drop-in sessions has created a much more responsive and accessible advice service, something that we've actually been commended on by the NUS. As a result of this, we have seen and supported over 1,700 individual clients this year, be it through drop-ins, emails, virtual chats, or physical follow-up appointments. Across our shops, it's not just been about offering a wide range of products, but also how best we can save students money through various promotions and offers. With the refurbishment of the Leek Road shop and the move from being a cooperative outlet from an ordinary student shop, we believe that it's meant that students will have more of a fresh food and chilled product range offering available, and it's ideally located right next to halls of residences, so people won't have to nip into Sainsbury's to get that loaf of bread or fruit and veg, which is fantastic. In Stafford, the Beaconside Lounge refurbishment refreshed the feel of the space, and with new furniture, screens and decor, we know that students have really enjoyed being in it so far to date. Alongside this, the games room, the other room, has had a substantial upgrade of equipment, much to the delight of many an avid gamer. Through a range of different approaches, from complete event management like Bad Edit and the Diversity Fashion Show, to rehearsal spaces, to also supporting group activity, we've managed to host over 230 student-led activities just last year alone across all our venues. As well as our trading spaces, we've also looked to improve social spaces for students, with investments into upgrading the Beaconside student space, otherwise known as the Tic Tac Lounge, as I've heard it, and also in Stoke, alongside the Cadman Library refurbishment, we've also seen the Cadman Courtyard student space created in conjunction with the university to add to the number of social spaces that our students can access across campuses. Opportunities for development for our students come in the form of developing you. This area of work was recognised as happening in the union for many years, but we've made it much more explicit and focused on it a lot in our current operating plans. We undertook an overhaul and committed to improving training for our student staff last year. We put in a special 2-day training event that brought together all 200 of our student staff across all campuses, and it was amazing to see people mingling and meeting across different outlets. To further develop our staff, we've also managed to work with the university to secure an accredited leadership development course to provide progression for our team leaders and supervisors across all of our outlets. Last year in total, we exceeded 300 members of core and student staff working for us, and our total student staff employment ran over to 68,000 hours. That figure doesn't include the opportunities that we also created through our internship and management training programme. In 2012 and 13, we started with 5 former student interns and a management trainee over in our venue in Beaconside last year, but this year I'm so pleased to report that we've actually got 6 interns and 3 trainee managers. We've also had a focus as well on developing those who are self-employed and have created a support and development package which we'll be extending to student DJs and designers as well. We engage these people on a self-employed basis as well, which I'm really, really proud of. In this, we can help them gain and also encourage them to get the skills and knowledge to be successful entrepreneurs. This leads me on to the Social and Ethical Enterprise Development Fund, otherwise known as SEED for short. This is a source of funding as a loan or investment that has been put aside from our reserves to support students to develop student-led businesses, projects or initiatives that involve and benefit other students and other peers. This year, we've also been working on a programme of development opportunities to roll out to all students, so please watch this space. Moving on to being proud to be staffs. So winning the varsity, obviously the massive elephant in the room year on year. I'd love to be able to stand here and say last year we beat Kill at varsity, but unfortunately I can't. What I can tell you though is even in defeat, the amount of proud to be staffs references was amazing, and I am looking forward to doing it all again and engage you all to be proud to be a part of staffs. We believe we operate great venues as a students' union that look to provide a safe and responsible environment for students. Over the last few years, we've looked to challenge ourselves to prove and then keep improving this fact. In the past, each of our venues have achieved best bar none standard, but last year we looked to test all of them at the same time simultaneously. We did more than reach the standard, but attained the silver accreditation, which was a step up across all our venues, obviously a great result. It wasn't just our venue operation we've also assessed. After 2 successive years of achieving the gold standard for green impact, we took the opportunity to undertake an environmental excellence project. This allowed us the opportunity to take on a PC recycling project, which resulted in the achievement of the Green Impact Excellence Award for the first time ever. Off the back of last year's environmental work and our housing survey, we've also been successful in securing government funding for our Green Pad initiative. The 2-year project provides funding to set up an environmental accommodation service. The project will employ students in the inspection and accreditation of student accommodation and to make sure that they are actually recognising environmentally sustainable rental properties and landlords as well. The aim is to obviously develop environmentally aware student tenants so that you're not obviously going into all-inclusive rented properties and sort of leaving lights on. We do want you to be as green as possible. Since we've been talking about funding and finances, this leads me really nicely on to giving you a report on the finances of last year as a union. Last year, we know that we were taking on a lot of new work with the start of our strategic plan, and as a result, we planned to dip into £70,000 of our reserves to fund this. This meant we planned for £70,000 more expenditure than income. I'm very pleased to be able to report back that at the year's end, despite us not achieving our overall trading income targets with a 3% fall in sales, we were able to control our overall expenditure. We've also received some windfall benefits from external funding sources and our retrospective payments from suppliers for stocking and promotions, which was about £30,000 more than we actually anticipated. The result of this is that we didn't have to eat into our reserves and left a small operating surplus of £29,000, with clubs and societies fundraising activity also giving them a carryover of £10,000. We therefore took the decision to invest some of our reserves in improving facilities for UL students. With the support of the university, we invested almost £1 million last year into improving the lounge, LRV and Verve, and also moving Leek Road Shop into a cooperative venture, supplying a convenience store offering. With all of these investments, we are forecasting growth from the changes that we have made, and will be managing these extremely carefully to ensure that they are achieved this year. One of the things that I'm actually also encouraged to do and required to do as part of this AGM is to share with you the affiliation that your Students' Union makes every year. This is a requirement of the Higher Education Act. So what you can see on screen, I'm hoping you can see, is a list of organisations that we've been affiliated to last year, and some of the new ones that we also plan to affiliate to this year also. As a union, we recognise that we can achieve more by being collaborative, whether that's through our association nationally with other students' unions through the NUS, or through governing and organising sports bodies such as the Rugby Union, all the way through to professional associations such as Advice UK or the Institute of Money Advisors. The final thing that I need to also ask you is for your approval of our auditors. In 2011, we put our auditing process out to tender, and as a result, Howarth, Clark and Whitehill were appointed. They have now completed 2 audits for us and assisted with our transition to producing an annual report and accounts as a registered charity. On the basis of the quality and value that they have provided in the first 2 years as auditors, it is the trustees' recommendations that they be appointed to conduct 2013-14's audit this year. For the record, I need to ask, has any member in the audience got any objection to this? Brilliant. Okay, before I hand over to the chair, Kris, to begin the Future Staffs Forum, are there any questions to myself or the rest of the trustees about any of the report or the accounts that I've presented so far? Fantastic. I'd like to welcome the panel to the stage then, so we can commence with the Future Staffs Forum. Thank you. Very kind, thank you.
Shaded on the end, isn't it? It is bright. Do you start? You setting up? You're just. Do you want me to start it? Yeah. Yeah. I'll put that. Yeah, you can speak on. So I'll kick it off. I'll start it. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me just before I carry on? No, I'm away from 2 mics. Okay. What I'm going to first of all do is introduce everyone that's on the panel, then we'll go through the idea of what we're doing for this section tonight. So my name is Kris Winpenny, I'm one of your Students' Union Vice Presidents for this year. To my left-hand side we have Rochelle, who's Students' Union President for this year. And then going along the side to my right side we have Bernard Shaw, Director of Information Services. We have Steve Wynne-Williams, who is the Dean, Dean of Academic Policy and Development. We have Kris, who's going to be our Chair this evening. We have Duncan White, who's Director of Estates. We have Linda Degg, who is Director of Commercial Services, and Dave Parks, who is Associate Director of Learning and Teaching and Information Systems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through very quickly of the context for tonight. So over the last 3 years, the university has undergone a significant number of strategic, operational and physical changes. It's moved from 6 faculties to 4 and brought in consistency of faculty management teams to improve the delivery of courses. At the same time, it's realigned courses with faculties and space, with the latest change being engineering moved to Stoke. It's built a new science centre on Leek Road campus and undertaken a landscaping project across both campuses that looks to improve the environment between the buildings. There have also been changes to support the spaces with complete reconfiguration of the Goodman Library at the Stoke campus and plans to bring together the IT and library resources into the Oxford building at Stafford. In looking at the difference it makes to students' lives, the university has sought to define and deliver clear, distinction of education delivered at staffs with its graduate pledge and focus on graduates becoming work ready and world ready. As the university have been undertaking these developments, the union has been progressing also. With a vision based on every student being proud to be its staffs, the union has expanded its employment of students and role in helping students identify the skills gained for activities alongside their studies. It has undertaken improvements to its venues and retail operation across the campuses and changed its officer focus to support the effectiveness of the student voice delivered through student academic representative structures. But at the same time, as the union and university have been developing, so has the higher education landscape has been moving. Student fee contribution ceilings have been moved from £3,000 to £9,000 with increased competition for student numbers between institutions. The search by students to make a university education affordable now means that over 50% of Staffordshire University students are local to university and commuting in from home addresses. And with the shift of fees from central government to individual students, there is a declining level of funding going to universities and more uncertainty about future income. This is making universities look carefully at where its resources are best applied to ensure the delivery of quality of experience efficiently. And with the fees associated with university increasing, so do student experience expectations. This impacts on everything from accommodation quality, sports facilities, contact time, opening hours, availability of resources, speed of response, to name a few. In this context that we meet this evening to discuss what the future of staffs could be like and to input into the question what next. From this, I'd like to hand over to every panel member to introduce themselves and to offer insight in what they see are the challenges, opportunities and questions going forwards. And before picking up on some of the questions posted online, the forum is open up. After we pick the questions online from the forum, we'll open up to the floor for further thoughts. So if you want to start on my right with Bernard Shaw.
Okay, thank you, Chris. In terms of what I consider to be the sort of challenges, particularly from an information services perspective, which is really looking at the library provisions and the open learning spaces, and also looking at the general provision of information technology within all of our campuses. I think really there's sort of 4 main areas which I consider to be essential. One is rounding about the experience for every student. It's about really being clear and explicit now in terms of what our offerings should actually be to our students. The change in terms of fees and this sort of view on value is really making people sort of think very carefully about what kind of decisions they're making. I also think that from a technology perspective, it's going to be about the effective use of technology. It's about applying that technology to its best in terms of learning, in terms of teaching, and in terms of assessment as well. It's about sort of supporting the changes and the trends which are actually taking place inside technology and which will be brought into the university sector. Particularly about things like the software commercialisation which we're seeing now, where people are using more and more open access software to do things as opposed to the sort of proprietary software which in the past the universities supplied. And also sort of how technology is actually applied inside learning and teaching and the impact which it can have. And I think the sort of final thing really, from my perspective, is about how we provide all our different kinds of services into the student population. So I'm thinking about how we configure our spaces to actually maximise the benefit for all our students, what kind of equipment we actually put into those spaces, what kind of software we put into those spaces in terms of what we put onto the equipment, and also obviously the kind of books and journals which we provide, whether we provide them physically or electronically. And it's about maximising accessibility, but also giving excellent value for the cost which we're sort of expending into all those different areas. So those are my views from an information service perspective in terms of the challenges which we face going forward.
Okay, and next we've got Steve from Williams.
Okay. Anyway, thanks very much anyway for inviting us this evening. It's going to be very interesting to hear what comes from the floor, which is of course the most important part of the evening. And just thank all those who've come out. I'm sure others thought of coming out, but then look at the weather and thought, well, maybe not. But you're here to represent your colleagues who are too weak to come out this evening. Anyway, I'm Stephen Williams. I'm Dean of Academic Policy and Development and have responsibility for delivering with the faculty, the academic strategy. And that covers the programmes that students take, the learning and teaching that takes place on those programmes. It also looks at the quality of that experience in terms of the standards of those programmes, the right level, and the quality of your experience as well as learners. And finally, about research and scholarship, which for you and for the staff who teach you is very important, that staff are at the cutting edge or near the cutting edge of their subject. So those are the 4 areas that I have responsibility for. It's always dangerous to try and predict what might happen in maybe 4 or 5 years' time. But what I would say is 4 points I'd like to make. Firstly, we want to continue to provide programmes and final awards that are rigorous, that are relevant, and at the cutting edge of the subject. And so when you go out into the world for employment, that you are absolutely well equipped to pursue your career. Things have changed. I mean, I'm a geographer. I was head of geography here and associate dean in sciences. And when I decided to do geography, I did it because I loved the subject, still do, strangely, and continued to do a PhD for another 3-4 years. I was on a one track and ended up where I am today, strangely as well. Things are different, and if we look at some well-known figures, that 50% of the jobs that will be available in 10 years' time actually don't exist at this point in time. So what we're saying is that the subjects that you study will be pretty relevant now and maybe for 3 or 4 years, but going forward for the future jobs market, you have to have constant updating. The other thing is that the skills that you learn, which are non-subject specific, are just as important for employability, and what we want to do is ensure that those skills are embedded in those programs. And Kris talked about the pledge, and I'll mention the Staffordshire Graduate, which is embedded in every program on campus, and that you are gaining those skills. You mightn't know about it, but you are gaining those skills as you go through your program. The second point is more sort of futuristic, looking at flexibility. And I know Fee Woods here, who's a great advocate of flexibility. And the 3-year gold standard of a degree, I would suggest, might quite well be different in 5 to 10 years' time. We've already got 2-year fast-track degrees in the university. That is, you do 3 years and 2 years without any loss of quality or standard. Part-time degrees will grow over the years as people find that they need to work as well as study at the same time. And so universities like ours will need to prepare for that future. So that's in terms of how we deliver programs going forward. Bernard's also mentioned how we teach and how you learn, about VLEs, Blackboard. I'm sure you've all used Blackboard. Yes? Anybody who hasn't used Blackboard? Well, you're not going to tell me anyway, are you? So I'll carry on. But the open educational resources, MOOCs, massively online open courses, are there. There are mixed views about them. But, you know, we could use MOOCs as part of our learning profile to provide very good content. And that is something that might well happen in future. So there's many areas in terms of learning and teaching that perhaps we don't know exactly the shape of, but we know roughly how things are going to look in future. The third element I mentioned about quality. In terms of your experience, the NSS is very important to us to see what you feel about the course. There's, the student viewfinder survey as well gives us that for levels 4 and 5, NSS is level 6, and we look at that and we make changes to what we do on the basis of what you say. We're doing okay, but there's always room for improvement, and we always want to hear from students how you think we can improve as we go forward. In terms of teaching, the staff that teach you and other students, we're very, very committed to making sure over the medium term that all our staff are professionally qualified teachers within the context of higher education. And that is getting a fellowship of the Higher Education Academy, which is the overarching body in the UK that looks at quality of teaching. You might be interested to know, there again you might not, that 25% of our staff are fellows, teaching fellows of the Higher Education Academy. The national average is 19%, so we're doing pretty good in terms of the national figure, and we're making a very big commitment to pushing that percentage up fairly quickly. Fourthly and finally, it's about you and your involvement. The idea of student engagement means that students increasingly, and I bet it's not unrelated to the fact of the increase in fees, to be involved in various aspects of your experience. And just to point out that we're doing quite a lot already. So we have students, academic partners, we have reviewers, student reviewers on panels in the university, we have student-led teaching awards. All those things add up to a huge commitment to increase student engagement in the university. On the national picture, and I'll be finishing fairly soon, is that our funding body and the National Union of Students have jointly created a student engagement unit, nonetheless, to support and take forward initiatives around students becoming engaged with their learning experience in university. And that's a huge challenge for universities to take that on board, and something that we'll be working with the Students' Union here over the coming year or two.
Okay, thank you very much. As Steve said, good evening everyone, and thank you very much for coming along. I'm also aware that you're streaming to Stafford campus, so good evening all those at Stafford. And hopefully the weather is not as bad as it is here. A bit about my remit then. I am the Director of Estate, which means that I'm responsible for all the estate and all the buildings. There's quite a sizable amount of them. Primarily, I have to make sure that the buildings and the estate is safe. I have an obligation under the Health and Safety at Work Act to do that. Equally, I have to make sure that they're suitably functional. That means that whether it's a designation of a room, that the function of the room matches that. I have to make sure that all the estate and buildings are compliant with legislation, and there is, as I suspect you probably already know, a raft of legislation out there, from Equality and Diversity, Disabled Discrimination Act, asbestos, Legionella, building standards. The list goes on and on and on. But that is something that we have a responsibility for as well. We're also responsible for the sustainability of the estate, and that's not simply the environmental sustainability, which is a component which we take seriously, but also the financial sustainability. We have to make sure that everything that we do is in actual fact affordable, and it's about balancing budgets. So I suppose in terms of the challenges facing particularly the estate, not necessarily the university, it's obviously the competitive and changing environment, and Steve was making reference to that in his introduction. There is obviously competition across the sector, but it extends beyond the sector. I mean, there's a lot of investment in education spanning across the school sector, the FE sector, as well as the HE sector. So I suppose the challenge to us is that as our students go through their education, and they go through the schools and those that have come through the FE colleges, there's been so much investment out there that there are a lot of attractive facilities, and our students are now becoming familiar with good facilities, and they have higher expectations. When they go on to universities, they expect those universities to have those same standards. I suppose the challenge for the university sector is that their estates are far larger, and their estates are far more diverse in terms of their age and mix of buildings. Some of the buildings are listed buildings, which means that it's difficult to make sort of changes to them. So I suppose, we have to consider what we do in that respect. On a good point, the university does invest a lot in its estate. We spend about £3 million per annum dealing with maintenance, and over the last 3 years we spent £12 million per year. So that's £36 million we spent over the last 3 years, and you can see some of the significant investment we've done. It's all around us, thankfully. The science building was completed a year ago. We're beginning to see the effect of the new landscape improvement. We carried out the Brindley improvement in the food court and the IT suite up on the top floor. We carried out the Mellor refurbishment for engineering coming from Stafford to Stoke. So there is a lot of investment from the university, but I have to say that relative to our peers, we have to make sure that we keep that pace going. More is needed. The university recognises that, which is why the university is now embarking upon its review of the master plan. That master plan, when it goes to the Board of Governors in January next year, will put us on a new path for even more significant investment. And we're talking about probably in the region of 100 million. There is a lot of money going into the university over a period of time. In terms of the estate, I talked about the old and new. We have old buildings, we have new buildings. With the old buildings, we obviously inherit poor functionality, and it's something we have to deal with. One of the issues that Stafford also has is multi-sites. We have Telford, we have Shrewsbury, we have Stafford, we have Stoke. So it's about sort of gaining a student experience across all those estates, all those campuses, which are of the same level. So that is something that we hope to deal with in terms of the master plan. Even if you look at the Stoke site, we talk about it being one campus, but the reality is we have part of the campus on Leek Road and we have another part on College Road. So even within one geographic area, we sometimes find that there are difficulties. Funding is probably the biggest challenge, I suppose, facing any institution. It's the budget availability, and certainly from my perspective, it's about balancing priorities. It is about balancing the priority of legislative compliance, which I was talking to you about, versus the planned maintenance, making sure that everything that around the estate is working, versus the refurbishment, which is the localised intervention. It's the small and medium scale works, as well as the large scale capital builds. And I suppose because I'm sitting here with my colleagues, I'm talking about my budget, but obviously holistically in terms of the university, each of my colleagues here is also vying for the same sort of budget as well to do their work. So it is about balance the priorities across all the services. In terms of the opportunities, I've already alluded to the master plan. It is a fantastic opportunity for the university to take great strides forward. I am a fresh person. I've been here 9 months. It's obvious to me there were issues when I came here. Thankfully, the university a year and a half ago was aware of those issues, and it has put measures in place to move forward on that. So as I said, the master plan is a good sort of opportunity to take a fresh look at all what we do in terms of learning and teaching, in terms of the curriculum portfolio, in terms of the character of the estate, because it's not only sort of just the buildings that you are necessarily sort of learning in yourself, it's your whole experience across the whole estate. I suppose one of the other things that we have to do when we look at the master plan is make sure that when we carry out investment, that the greater body of the students can actually share in all that investment. If we take the science building, it is primarily for the science activity, but the university took efforts to make sure that there was a cafe on the ground floor which allowed the rest of the student body to participate in that building. I think moving forward, when we develop the master plan, when we consider the buildings that we're going to do and prioritise, we'll have to make sure that the first phase of buildings are those which will allow the bulk of the student body to participate in that improvement. And that is an opportunity we have. And of course, finally, there is an opportunity to grow Staffordshire University's profile locally, nationally and internationally. So questions, I would ask what questions I would have going forward. I suppose it's will the higher education sector change in a direction that we can't foresee? If we can't foresee it, then it makes it more difficult to plan to deal with. But anyway, that's enough for me, and I'll await your questions. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Linda Degg, and I look after a number of the facilities elements of the university. In no particular order, that's catering, cleaning, accommodation and residences, campus operations, don't fall asleep because I haven't finished my list yet, the conference office, a number of receptions, and our environmental unit. So those are the areas that I look after, and yes, that does include car parking, as many of you will know. For me, it's very simple. In our department, our challenges and opportunities are probably the same. And for us, it's getting a balance of commercial sustainability with offering you all the best service that we can do. And it's juggling those two priorities, because they can sometimes be in conflict with each other. In terms of questions, has anybody got a crystal ball? Because the future is changing rapidly, and as fast as we think we know the answer, the game changes. So.
Excellent. Thanks everyone. I'm last on the panel, so I have to say I agree with everything that the panel's just said. But I'm Dave Parks, by the way. I'm Associate Director for Information Services. I'm a librarian by trade. And I've seen so many changes in that world that it kind of reflects what everyone's been saying here. We're in a transition period. We're in a place where things are moving very rapidly. Technology is changing, buildings are changing, the use of buildings is changing. And I think I'd just exhort you, really, to make sure you're a part of that. You know, make your voice heard, both through the union, through your reps, but also as individuals, get to know the staff. And you can influence and be a part of this change and this transition. And it's part of the skills that you can use and reuse as you work throughout your career. So that, I just want to leave you with that, really, and just answer any other questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I'm Kris Warwick, and I'm here basically to chair this panel today, and hopefully represent your views and questions to the panel, because this is basically the university as we have it here. I don't think we get any higher, really, do we? It's all directors, aren't we? So, yeah, we can. If there's any questions you have in about 20 minutes, I hope, you can literally put them to yourselves. And there's no hold bars here. You can ask them anything you like, really, as long as it's constructive. Personal. Yeah, not personal. Yeah. But first off, I'd like to start with, as many of you know, we had some online submitted questions. Now, I've just been notified we actually have a lot more than I realised. I took these from last night, and there was a lot posted today. So if there's any that really look like they should be, really represented here, I'd like to be told. Also, I've got nothing to timekeep. I've literally got nothing. So if you could give me a nod when we're going, that's fantastic. Oh, there's more than that now. Yeah. Okay, so the first question is about travel, especially inter-campus travel, regarding the new shuttle bus we have. We had the X1, was it? That's now been cut completely. And the question is basically asking, frankly, is there a better way of doing it? Because the shuttle buses seem quite inadequate from the way that this question's been asked. Also, there's, as you know, there's a lot of parking issues, and people are travelling to the campuses, parking up and using the shuttle buses. There is no direct transport links. And he's, the person that's put this across, I believe he's here actually, Kris. He's basically saying, is there a better way of doing this, to include the public transport, to confine it together, to make it better. But also, if you all got the same piece of paper I did about this forum, the landscape for education is changing, as quite rightly was said. And 50%, I believe it was quoted, 50% of the students are now travelling to come locally to university. You know, we're struggling with parking, we're struggling with public transport. What can you do?
Okay.
Is the question.
Yeah.
I'll pass it over to you because I know that's your remit.
It's me again.
So there we go, Linda.
Everybody. I just want to take us back a little bit because some of you will know and will have used, I hope, the previous X1 bus service, which was a partnership between the university, Baker's Coaches or Baker Bus, and London Midland Railway Company. And really, the subsidy for the university ran into many hundreds of thousands of pounds to operate that service. And because there were 3 partners involved, we found that trying to get a timetable that actually delivered what students needed in terms of matching start times of lectures and indeed staff start times of meetings, finishing times, was impossible. And it was impossible because of the restrictions that the Department for Transport put on London Midland in terms of acceptable waiting times for connections. So that's the sort of boring history really of the X1. We spent last year meeting with Baker's Coaches, who ran the timetable for us, many times to try and discuss options to make that timetable fit what students needed better, and we just couldn't find a solution. So we decided to look at whether we could offer something that responded to some of the feedback that we'd received through surveys, which was that it's unreliable, it's never on time, the times aren't suitable, and it's too expensive. So when we looked at what we could do as an in-house solution, first of all, we wanted it to be free to the end user because we felt that was a massive benefit, particularly for students using the service. We did talk to faculties to see if we could get an idea of what demand between campuses might be. We do know that there is a body of students who prefer to live in Stoke yet may have to travel to Stafford to study. So we tried to understand as much of that as possible, and I'll be absolutely honest, sitting here today, we've been victims of our own success. The demand for the buses far exceeded our initial expectations. We're trying to deliver it within a set budget, as all of us have alluded to. So whilst I would love to put on more and more buses and get more and more drivers, we can't do that. What we're trying to do, though, is use this first semester to understand what the demand and the patterns of demand are, so that as we move forward, we can get something that perhaps fits the bill a little better. We have ordered a couple of minibuses of our own, so at the moment we're using rental buses again, just so that we can understand before committing ourselves to something what we can do. We will be talking to other bus operators to see whether there's any opportunity there. So we're listening to all of the feedback we're getting. We're trying to turn the buses around as fast as we possibly can. Sometimes roadworks, incidents on the motorway and the stuff that's unavoidable causes a bit of an issue. But other than that, we're trying as fast as we can to turn things around. We have resorted to using taxis at times, but as you'll appreciate, that's a massively expensive way of moving people back and forth. So we're trying now to just get to something that fits the bill for the majority of people.
Is the problem, do you think, that you're not using the existing transport network? You've took it in-house, you're dealing with it yourself, and you're taking that responsibility on your shoulders instead of passing it on to the experts who are the existing transport links. Do you think that it could be better utilised by using, a shuttle bus from, for instance, the bus stations, from the train stations that are already there? I know from who I've spoken to myself, students don't mind paying for transport as long as it's reasonable and as long as it's accessible. And at the minute, it's not accessible because they're having to travel to the car parks to use the shuttle buses. Do you think that's something you could look at doing in the future?
Yeah, it's definitely something. We're as I say, this is the first time we've done it. We're just a month or so into it, and we need to understand how best we can meet people's needs. But I mean, people coming to use the car park and then use the shuttle bus is not necessarily what we were originally intending the shuttle bus to be for. Originally, it was to move students without their own transport between campuses. And that was what we set out to try and achieve. But as I say, we have been victims of our own success.
Well, that's part of the problem, isn't it? Because with the shuttle buses running from the campus, they have to get to the campus first.
Yeah.
I think that is the main issue here, isn't it?
I mean, The other issue that we've got in terms of if we were to operate on a more commercial scale is that has an awful lot more legislation and restriction around it. So we wouldn't be able to just start picking up all over the city or indeed Stafford without careful thought and proper planning and consultation and all the rest that goes with that. But what I'm saying today is that we're reviewing, we're taking all of the feedback and all of our learnings on board, and hopefully we can come up with a better solution moving forward.
Is there a time frame in place?
Well, we're using this first semester to fully review. We're keeping logs on all of the buses. We're trying to work with faculties. So I would hope we've got a better proposal by the new year.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, the next... Anyone got anything to add on that, by the way? No. The next question was submitted about attendance certificates. As all students here have to submit attendance certificates. I'm not quite sure who to pass this to. Information services, I think. And the question's been asked, is there not a better way of doing this, possibly electronic way of scanning into lectures, etc. So you know exactly when students are here. As student finance rely on them figures, so we get our loans, etc. on time. Is there any better way it could be done?
I'll start,
Yeah,
and
by all
then
means. Yeah.
Bern can follow up. As a lecturer, and still as a lecturer, what I do still is hand out bits of paper, and then you tick it off on another bit of paper, and then you check that, and that is totally inefficient. I think that there are some good examples out there of universities who've got electronic systems. Next door, the Sixth Form College have got electronic system for attendance. And I think there is no lack of enthusiasm to try and do that. I think it's finding the right technology, and there's lots of small types of technology that could use, but it's got to be on a scale and it's got to be done strategically. So my understanding is that it's something that we will be doing, but it's getting the technology right and getting the software right to record that. I don't know, Bernard, if that's about right.
Yeah, I think, once again, just to sort of go back a little bit, a couple of years ago, I remember sort of discussing this with various representatives from the university, and at the time there was a certain amount of sort of reluctance to engage in this kind of thing, because I think what the view was then was that this was something which took place in FE colleges and didn't really apply in higher education, and part of the higher education experience was about people managing their own time, and as a consequence there wasn't really a massive interest to take on board something, as Steve says, which would be quite a large investment for the institution, because we are much bigger than most colleges, and therefore to invest in one of these kind of systems which would meet all the different sort of needs which a university would put onto it is quite a significant investment. However, moving forward, I think what I'm finding out, particularly probably over the last 6 to 12 months, is that there is now an interest in doing this, that the landscape has changed, and what we're currently doing is having conversations with academic colleagues, etc., to try and find out what the sort of landscape is, what the basic kind of needs are of these kind of systems, so that we can start to sort of work to provide the right kind of technology solution. So I think that's the background to this, that a couple of years ago there just wasn't an appetite. Now we're starting to get into that mode, and we're more than happy to sort of step in and help out with the technology.
Fantastic. Do we have a time frame, any ideas when we're going to be looking at doing this? Or?
Well, what I've got at the moment is I've actually got meetings with academics which are taking place this month, with a view to sort of working on a specification. What I will say is, once again, these things are not cheap. So what I'd be looking to do probably is during the spring to put together some kind of proposal to the university executive, who actually are the ones that are above us in terms of your comment, in terms of you've got the best there is. You nearly have. But then what I'd be doing is making a business case with academic colleagues to say this is something which we should be starting to implement. My gut feeling is that it will be something that will probably get approved across the summer if it happens, with a view to sort of rolling out there on in.
If I could just add a slight provocation there, you do hear voices saying, why should we register students like that? Given that in some institutions all lecture notes are on Blackboard and that you can access those before the lecture very often. My son's at the university and that's the case. So why would you go along and listen to it again when you've actually read it? It's about learning maybe rather than teaching, and that is a voice that you hear not often, but it is out there. And so the question exists, why do students have to be registered in when you can actually learn and perform very well without being in that classroom?
I think it boils down to funding as well, doesn't it? I mean, us students, we don't get our student loans, we don't get our grants, etc. Until our attendance has been confirmed by the university. And ringing up and saying, I'm at your university often doesn't cut it, you know.
But there is a learning issue around that.
Yes, an engagement issue as well, like you discussed before. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else to add anything? No? Okay, the next question was submitted about the university registered landlords. As you know, the university run a scheme that has a list of landlords, yet there is no assurance for students, or indeed any protection for the landlords, of course, anyway from the university. It's literally just a handbook that says these are landlords that we know about. If a student is learning of a landlord and getting to know about accommodation from the university, should there not be some kind of protection there for the students? I think Linda,
Our accommodation office is made up of 3 people, and those 3 people are fully responsible for the landlord registration scheme, but don't have the resource within that team to go out there and inspect properties. But what we do is, in order to be registered with the university scheme, you have to be registered with the local council scheme as well. So you have to be accredited through the council scheme. We've also been having meetings recently, which the Students' Union have also been attending, to look at working across the union, ourselves and the council, to see how we can improve the accreditation scheme and work together to improve the standard of accommodation that's out there in the private sector. There is an awful lot of it that's very good, and I'm sure a lot of you would testify to that, but there can be some improvements. And certainly, as Rochelle's spoken already earlier in her presentation, the Green Pad initiative will certainly help us to do that. And again, the councils in Stafford and Stoke are really supportive of that as an initiative and want to get on board and work with us. So we are talking and we're developing ways in which we can improve the assessment of those properties.
So at the moment there is no assurance from the university, no help or assistance that students can get if they have problems with landlords?
If people have problems with landlords, then certainly I know the Students' Union guidance and advisors will be there. The university, we can offer some help, and we can certainly get help from the council as well, who often have an in to landlords. But we don't hold landlords necessarily to account on behalf of students at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else to add anything?
Yeah, I'd like to add as well onto that. I'm not too sure if it is like a prevalent issue in Stafford. It's not really come out from Stafford students, but I know predominantly in students that live in Shelton and Stoke that it's quite an issue in terms of registering. We are actually working with UniQ and the university in various meetings to try and potentially look at a different way of registering landlords, because obviously we know that it doesn't work the way it is as is. I mean, I know as a student, when I was looking for houses, I'd go automatically to the university registered landlords without actually knowing what the registration entails, and because it's got that badge of approval, a lot of students do think this is a credible person, but the university have said that, you know, it's been quite an easy process for people to become registered in the past, but they're looking at ways along with this to try and alleviate that and to fix that going forward, so it's not just, you know, that old badge of accreditation, but maybe something else that we can work towards looking at to have a new scheme of being registered if we don't want it to be. And Green Pad, I think, will obviously help with that, because we'll be getting into a working relationship with landlords of across both Stoke and Stafford to see the ones that are actually credible and are what we would class as being good and honest landlords. Quote me on that.
Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you. No one else to add anything? No? Thank you very much. Okay, I believe this is one of the last questions. I have another one. The next question is about library opening times. This has been quite a contentious issue, and indeed was brought up at the last student-led forum that we held. Basically, it's saying, the question itself that was submitted is saying, is it right that when they started here, they were offered a 24-hour library, and now that service is being taken away from them, during their studies here, the tuition fees have gone up from, I think it was £3,000 to around £9,000, which is, by anyone's standards, significantly more. And although we understand the issue is the university doesn't get funding from the government anymore, the fact still remains that the students are paying a lot more money and having services taken away from them. And I think the question brings up about the value for money, but also the university's responsibility to provide students with that value, even if it's an illusion, even if they don't take services away from them, because they're paying so much more money. I think that the issue is boiled down in the question quite well. Who wants to take this on? I think that's.
Want me to do?
Go on, kick off now.
Well, we do
Just fight over it if you like.
Yeah, thank you. I think, once again, just to sort of set the context a bit, 3 or 4 years ago now, we actually moved from what was a phased opening model, different times during term, to what we did outside of term time, to what was for us a relatively simple and straightforward model, which was a 7/24 365 model. The costs which the university incurred to actually deliver that service were significant, and the additional costs really are around and about the sort of safety and keeping the place secure outside of the hours when it's staffed by the university staff. And what we've been doing over time really is, as has been said really by all the panel, we have to compete with everybody else to get funding into the library, and also to sort of prove that we are really giving value for money to as many students as possible. And I think that's borne out in the investments which we've sort of made in the actual library space, in the technology and all that kind of thing. However, what we also do is we actually monitor the take-up of the service outside of, shall we say, normal staffed hours. And what's been quite clear is that once we get to the sort of early hours of the morning, we just are not getting the number of students coming through those doors to actually merit the additional cost which we're actually facing. So that was the sort of position which I was put into in terms of actually justifying the service. Now, what I didn't want to do was just to go back to a position where we were operating on a single model, where we had one kind of opening hours during term time, and then we sort of closed everything back down outside. So what we've tried to do is move to a flexible model. And with that flexible model, what we're trying to do is to actually support the academic calendar. So during the times when we know that those spaces are busy, we're actually open. On top of that, what we're also trying to do is to sort of learn from the experience. We've had various sort of consultations. We consulted with the Students' Union across the summer as we actually had to sort of broach this and undertake the changes. And sort of subsequently since, because of the feedback which we've had various meetings with the student body, and we've discussed a number of different things which we might be able to do in terms of flexing this approach so that it's more inclusive, shall we say. And one of the areas which came out of the last meeting which we had was to try and move towards, instead of going for something like a midnight close down, to try and move that more towards 2 o'clock, during term time. That's something which I've picked up on. There is a cost associated with doing that. It's not free. But what I've done is taken that back once again to the university executive. I've discussed this with the Vice-Chancellor, and I'm going to be making a case along with Dave at our quarterly business review for the fact that there are options which we can sort of consider, and there is a definite sort of vocal group of students who have been taking advantage of these kind of opening hours and are now feeling disadvantaged. So I'm trying to take this forward, but equally I do have to sort of bear in mind the fact that I'm servicing a really large number of students, and all the figures tell me that the vast majority of the students do not get any value out of that investment which we're putting in to opening the library during these times. So it's trying to bring that balance down and actually sort of meet in the middle. So that's what we've been trying to achieve.
Thank you. What about the reputation of the uni involved here? Because when you're competing on a national scale for students to attend here, surely a 24-hour library would be beneficial to us as our reputation.
Well, I think there's two things there. One is, yes, obviously you're right, anything like that is a good sales pitch. I think when you look at a number of universities, they advertise a 24/7, and when you start to get into it, they say, but it's term time only. Or, yeah, it's the flexible model. And in fact, I think you'll find that there's very few which have actually stuck with the 7x24 times 365, and it becomes a bit of a marketing ploy. So, for instance, Derby, for instance, they operate on this flexible model, and when I sort of asked them what they found about it, they just said they couldn't justify the costs back to the student body, given the kind of take-up that they get. So, yeah, you're right. It's also quite a lot sort of more simple for us as an information services department, because we don't have to flex staff in or anything. So I really want to sort of try and strike a balance between what is quite a sort of significant cost to the institution for sort of relatively small number of the students, but also give us the best value as I can. So I mean, it's a difficult one.
Just add to that, because it sounds as though what we're saying is, it's difficult for us to achieve. It's quite clear, if the demand is there, the university will consider and react to that demand. If the students want 24-hour access, and they actually demonstrate it by having the footfall in the libraries in the quiet hours, then that's the strongest measure that you can actually do to support the bid that Bernard would have to put in for extending the hours again. That is the simplest thing. If the demand is there, the university will consider it.
Is a petition with 150 names on it not enough feedback?
I think there's a difference between a petition where people say, yes, that's a good idea, and actual footfall. If the demand is there, and it's proven that the demand is there, and that is just evidenced by the amount of people who are using it over the hours, if the demand is there, it'll be quite clear. I'm reiterating myself, the university will consider it. Okay. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
Okay.
If you come back and sort of say, I don't know. I mean, I know it's been removed at the moment, so I suppose the difficulty is now it's almost how do you actually reintroduce that?
No, it hasn't been removed because it's still been flexed back in at key times. Right. So we do have the opportunity then to sort of use those figures as being indicative of what we will get at other times. And as Duncan says, that actually helps me to make a case. But I do have to address the broader body of students who will be saying, why are you spending this money on this kind of a service when actually there's very few of you that actually want to sort of take up on it, and I'm paying my 9,000 just as they are. I'd prefer you to spend it on technology in the library or something else.
Yeah. Okay, so is the flexi time that you're suggesting going to be 24/7 during term time, or is it going to be the 2 a.m. close that we know about already?
We will be open 24/7 for a third of the year. Yeah. So that's something that we are a 24-hour library at those key times, and it's working with you to determine when those key times are going to be. So we do have that opening thing. I mean, we get 600,000 visitors a year into the library. That's nearly as many as the V&A. And the V&A isn't open 24 hours, but that's a different thing. But what we need to see is people using it. When you've got 600,000 people spread out across the year using our spaces, and only single figures in some instances using it in those wee small hours, we do really have to make those decisions, as difficult as they are, and that's the challenge we face at the moment.
I would just add one final comment, which is, whilst that would add authority to your requirement for having 24-hour access, the university would have to consider quite seriously how it was approaching the learning and teaching if so many of its students were up between the hours of 12 and 6 in the morning studying throughout the night. I mean, obviously, we're talking about student experience here. Everyone requires to sleep, everyone requires to sort of be effective in their daily operations, I suppose. So what I'm saying is that whilst we would consider it, we would also have a concern necessarily about what that impact that was having on your lifestyle.
Yeah, I completely respect what you're saying. However, the footfall argument that was just mentioned, my question is, what about accessibility for minorities? What about if it's a minority of people that are using that desperately need to use that library during the night? For people, for instance, with disabilities, with anxiety disorders, that sort of thing, that find it difficult to use the library during the day?
That's a difficult one to be able to answer, really.
So will they be catered for, and will they be considered when you're making these decisions in the future?
Yes.
I think they would be, yes.
What we've considered this, and I think what we would have it is that when I've discussed this before, I've asked people with a disability to sort of come along to make the case. Let's bring the people that are an expert in this kind of an area that we've actually got in the university. And what I will be doing as a general manager is saying to them, you give me advice on what I need to do to help and address those kind of cases for those kind of individuals.
As I understand it, though, there was no questions made to the Disabled Students' Union or anything before that these were implemented. It was literally a study was done of how many people were using the library, and it was just cut, was it not?
No, there was a consultation piece which took place. We did talk to the Students' Union, and okay, it could have been broader in terms of the fact, but it was done across the summer. But that's part of the process now. As I say, we have had students with disabilities who've approached us, and that's been the position that I've taken back, is that if we can understand that position and I can bring along the experts from the university who will help me, because I'm no expert in actually understanding how to make the appropriate adjustments, then I will work with them to address that. But I couldn't turn around and say now that is a overwhelming case or not, because I just don't know the answer to that.
Okay, is this a decision that can be reversed? If there are consultations made in the rounds as a given, this is a decision that can be gone back on, isn't it?
I think to some extent it comes down to the budget piece, and there's a level of flexibility in there, but what I think we need to probably do is to understand, first of all, what the impact is of what we're offering. In other words, what kind of take-up we're getting, and use that to inform the decisions. And then, yeah, anything's possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone got anything to add on that? Okay, I'm going to move on to briefly, if we can, to the last online question that I have. If we have time at the end, I would like to visit some of the new ones that were posted today that I was unaware of, but I'd like to quickly move to the floor if I can. It's the last one's about the new academic calendar, and basically the question is regarding the time to prepare for the assignments. That there's very little time to prepare. Is it possible to make any changes for those people that have little time to prepare?
Okay, shall I
please
do. Colleagues can chip in. Just to say again, the context that there has been quite a bit of consultation around this, as you might understand. It affects staff, it affects students. And in fact, following the original proposal, which was to introduce 14-15 quite radical changes, that has been deferred, and 2014-15 will be less radical. Now, there is consultation going on, as I understand, with the Students' Union. And there is a commitment, if there is significant and widespread concerns, then that will be taken back to Academic Board in December. Is that happening now?
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. As a union, it's something that we did our own bit of research into doing. We had a consultation page and put the academic calendar working group sort of model as was on the website, and we had over somewhere within the realm of 350 responses just over the weekend, and most of them were broadly supportive, but within those there were still areas of people saying that, you know, these are things that we think could be a problem for X, Y, and Z reasons. So we have been working on a report that we are going to be submitting around to members of Academic Board and also Board of Governors as well that are on the Education Committee, just so that it's not, even though broadly there's support for it, there still are areas that may need to be readdressed, and we just have to work towards making sure that it does tick as many boxes for as many students as possible, and not just about as is, it's just about having a model to work with going forward, and that's what that consultation did.
If I could,
Sorry, go on.
no, just to add to that, I mean, if you look at what the current model is, and one that's been for a while, where the assessment is submitted after Christmas, and this is just stating the fact that when that's submitted, the next semester actually starts, and then teaching staff with sometimes very large modules start teaching, and then the marking backs up. And that affects the feedback to students. And we have a commitment of 20 working days in the university. And it's not an excuse, it's just a fact that happens. If you're continue to teach and you're trying to mark, say, 100 essays, then it becomes unlikely that you're going to hit the 20 days without working early hours in the morning and having all that light work balance stuff that Duncan mentioned. But that's the fact. I think there are ways around it. And I say it's not uncommon in other universities to have the assessment submitted at the end of the semester. Firstly, early release of assessments, and all staff will be directed to say that all assignments should be published within the module handbooks at the very start of the semester. The second point is that there is a reading week which can be used for preparing the assessment. Now, the question of whether you need more time to be capable of answering those assessments is a moot point. I think some students can quite easily produce essays through reading, through synthesizing, through discussing with others. So I think that's a very positive thing, having that standard week, a reading week in the middle of term. And also the idea in most modules that there is formative feedback as well at some point in the module which supports the learning. So not everything has to back up to the end. It is a process of learning, and I don't really see a huge problem with having it. I think it ultimately would be better for students to have that done at that point, and for staff who will be marking that and looking at those assessments.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything? Will the any changes in this calendar be forwarded to the library services to make sure that the 24-hour library
Absolutely.
dates can be changed? Okay.
So, if this was the case that we know the assignments are submitted at the end of the first semester, then the library will be opening to reflect that submission date.
Yes, we hook into that side of it, and also we actually hook into the technology in terms of when we do upgrades, when we do things like this, so as we try and work as close as we can with academic colleagues to make sure that changes to the tech are done at the best time for everybody as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to turn, I can't really see anyone unfortunately, but I'd like to turn the questions over to the floor. If anyone's got any questions, if you can make yourself aware to me, and I can see a hand there. Is that you? Is that Bal? Hiya, Bal. By all means, go ahead. I think we're going to get a microphone to you in a second. No singing, all right. see anyone.
Don't repeat.
It's awful, isn't it?
We agree.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Thank you very much. Hello. My name is Bar Stephen Deal. Everyone calls me Barlow. I've got a whole page of questions.
You've got a whole page of questions. Well,
I don't know where to start.
I'm limited to time, so if you'd like to pick your most important one, by all means.
Okay. Okay. Brindley building,
Yeah.
Henrion building look fantastic. Only problem is they are not wheelchair accessible. Henrion building, the doors are so heavy, it's ridiculous. I've seen able-bodied people struggle to get in there, but forget wheelchair users. And also Brindley Food Court is inaccessible because the countertops start here,
Right.
and I can't see the food
Okay.
that's been prepared. And also the disabled toilets in Brindley building, I can't get in, I can't get out.
Okay. I'll pass that over to Estates, if I may.
Thank you very much. I suppose it comes back to my opening comment about the challenges that university estates have, especially where they have a mixture of old and new buildings. This estate does contain old buildings. Building standards have moved forward quite a lot from the day when these buildings were put up.
It's not the old buildings that are problems, it's the brand new buildings that have been made last year.
Well,
Opened this year.
Is the Brindley building an old building?
Well, the Brindley building is an old building comparatively.
The food court is new.
Yeah, no, I mean, if I can come to that, what actually we're dealing with is, and it's the Henrion as well, what we're dealing with is refurbishment of old buildings. So what you see as a new interior is true, pretty much as you have a new interior here. And to all intents and purposes, we walk around this building, we think, great, it's fantastic, it looks new, so therefore it must be new. The reality is, the student union will tell you, they had to work very much within the structural limitations of the building. And therefore, whenever you refurbish, it's about trying to do the best you can within the parameters of the building. Within the Brindley building, you'll find out that in terms of lift accessibility and even the doors, the width of the door openings, it's very much the width of the corridor that we've got there as existing, and also the size of the lift well. The lift shafts are 30, 40, 50 years old, and therefore we're dealing with that as a constraint. I think as I said, going back to what I said at the outset, we are dealing with the problems of having an old estate. It's something that estates and the university recognises, which is why I set up a group, which is the Equality and Diversity Engagement Group, where estates meet very frequently to understand. And I suppose the first issue of addressing these is to understand what the issues are. So very much we're engaged in making sure we understand the difficulties of mobility around the estate, and then we can prioritise the spend against that. And we've been dealing with Claire Ridgely and Dave Allman very, very closely, as well as a number of students, to work out what those issues are. Now, I appreciate I might not be addressing particularly your question, but what I'm trying to say is, holistically, we understand the problems and we are trying to prioritise them and work out what they are.
Okay, so if we could address the question directly, is there anything that can be done about the materials that the doors are made of and the height of the countertops? Surely that isn't a structural issue.
I can look into that. I'll look into that. Okay. I'm trying to sort of paint a generic issue about, which goes beyond the particular issue you have, but we will experience across the whole estate.
Can I just personally, here and now on record, invite all of you to our next Disabled Student Forum meeting, which is taking place at Staffordshire campus in the Students' Union on the 20th of November which is Wednesday.
Is it the 20th about?
Yeah, 20th.
20th.
Yeah, and at 3 p.m. But please all come, so we can actually tell you our issues, and hopefully you'll listen.
I think if I could represent your interests here a little bit, Val, I think starting a group to look into the interests of students that are, and engage with students, I think the Disabled Student Union is probably the most important people to be engaging with here.
Well, it is, and we are engaging with the student union. And to be fair, as part of the group, we have actually sort of set in place a mechanism whereby the feedback from that particular group is fed up to the engagement group.
Yeah.
So all I would say is, if it isn't, and you feel it isn't being fed up, then we really need to sort of look and see why it isn't being fed up. But certainly the intention of the engagement group is that we do receive these views and react to them.
Could one of your team accept her request that you attend?
I think that's a very good idea.
Thank you.
Can I just say, yes, you are working with the student union, but no disrespect to the officers, they are not disabled. So please attend our meeting.
Why have someone speak for you when you can speak for yourself, pal? Exactly. Okay, thank you very much, pal, for your question. Thank you.
Also, halls aren't accessible either. Just put it out there.
Say that again, sorry.
Halls of residents
The halls.
aren't accessible
They're not
for
accessible.
wheelchairs.
Well,
Okay.
I think it's part of the extended issues that we're trying to deal with.
Okay, thank you, Bal. Thank you very much. Anyone else got any other questions? If I can go to the gentleman in the red top. I can't really see.
It is red.
It is.
It's about estates, really, because obviously you say for the new estate strategy you want to affect the majority of students. However, the problem with the majority of students is they pay a lower fee to what the ones with specialist facilities use. Like, I study drama, and yet we're in probably one of the worst facilities around the campus. We're stuck in dead-end buildings that are not fit for our purpose. We don't fit, for example, our furniture stores are full. Yeah. Yet no matter what we bring to the Students' Union or through our STARS meetings, nothing's ever told to us, nothing's ever brought up about it. Yes, we've got new dressing rooms, yet they're new, but we use them, 3-4 times a year compared to the studios that we use throughout the year. And it's like the heating, we're freezing cold in the winter because you're using these quite unsustainable electric heaters to heat the buildings. So surely it's wasting your money, and it's not exactly bringing us better facilities for people who are spending £9,000 or near enough £9,000 a year, comparing the facilities to, say, Derby, who have got their brand new Derby Theatre, or one they've taken over. Compare it to Wolverhampton University, they've got a brand new performing arts building. Staffordshire, you're trying to outreach the local area, you've got the worst. How do you expect to attract people like that when your facilities just aren't good enough?
I think that's under your remit too, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I heard a lot there. I'm not quite sure what the question was. I mean, it comes back to the point that I do appreciate we have tired estate, old estate. I appreciate your point that we are using old technology to heat spaces, which is very costly to the university. Obviously, if we create efficient estate, we will be able to save money and reinvest that money in the estate. My heart goes out to those students who are using the old accommodation, and to those students who are accessing the good accommodation. Then they're in a very fortunate position. I suppose the challenge of the master planning, the estate strategy, is to make sure that we progress the estate forward. But as I said in the beginning, we must make sure they don't just progress it for a group of students. We have to make sure that we prioritise the funding such that all the students can benefit in the new estate. And I think that's the closest I can get to saying that we're not going to solve all the problems, but we have to make sure that all students can participate in the improvement.
And just to add to that, I think you're actually going to make it worse from this September, when you're going to move the motorsports to Dwight. Although that's going to be around the other side to what our building is, the soundproofing, we can hear people walking past behind the building, let alone motorsports like revving their engines or doing what they do as part of their course. So we're going to be worse off, and ultimately the course could close because people just won't come and do the course because the facilities aren't good enough. So you say that people are going to pay, the most students need to actually engage and use the facilities, which I kind of agree with, but having the better, especially specialist facilities, which you're going to lose out more because they're paying the higher fees, you could actually loan out. It's like we very rarely use the buildings in the evenings. Yet as a university and as a commercial venture, you could loan out those facilities to outsiders to increase revenue into the university rather than these just general lecture halls that are very rarely used.
Also, the intake on the technical course of drama is down this year compared to last year. The fact that you've actually got third years covering technical shows for first years because there's not enough technical students on that course. So that is an effect of the property.
So let me just clear this up. Is your question what the university is going to do about the estate, or is it what they're going to try and do?
I was just adding on to Matt's comment about the drama course and the fact that because the facilities are not up to standard, that also that has had an impact on student intake.
Okay. So how the estate is affecting the intake.
Yeah, I mean, I think the university fully accepts the fact that to attract and maintain students, it has to have specialist teaching accommodation which fit for purpose. And in addition to that, it also has general teaching rooms which are fit for purpose as well. I mean, we've talked about the prioritisation of funding, the difficulty in matching funding according to against an old estate which requires a lot of investment. I think the particular point I have to say though is that we as a university must make sure when we carry out some investment in one place, we don't compromise, what's already there. And I think, what you're raising is a valid concern, and it's something we have to take on board. I think because you're asking more academic questions, estates respond to a brief given by the academic faculties. So I think that, I'm hoping there's a route by which you can feed your comments and concerns through the faculty, and that they can come back through to estates to address.
So you'd like their feedback through their faculty?
I think it should be through the faculty because estates respond to the brief given by the faculties.
I've been a student representative for 2 years, and every single meeting I've pushed and pushed to say how bad the situation is, and we just haven't had any feedback from the university.
Well, I think in that case you need to escalate it up to whether it's your course leader, whether it goes up to the dean of the faculty, because ultimately she will have responsibility for progressing any of those comments through the faculty plan. And Duncan's absolutely right. We hear exactly what you're saying, and I sort of think it's quite worrying that you are saying that, but it needs to go through the channels to actually be heard. And I would suggest that if you're saying it, then presumably the staff are saying it as well.
Is this something that could be investigated from tonight and hopefully put his concerns at ease?
I still think that the right route is through the faculty.
Yes, right. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for your question. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a better answer than that. But any other questions? I'm really. There's a young lady right in the back in the middle. I think I can. It's the only person I can see.
I've got a question on our Twitter feed. It's from Tom Lane. He says, is there a way to keep the library open longer without cutting the book fund? He says that students can buy books, but we can't buy a library and the facilities in it.
Very good question. I think we've touched on libraries, haven't we? But if we could briefly touch on that point.
Well, I guess the book fund and the library and the opening the library are two very different things, actually.
Different budgets.
They're absolutely different budgets and different kind of considerations, and they can't easily cross those over. I don't know, Ben, what you would say anything there?
In terms of, I think the point here which has been made to some extent is we need to be imaginative and look at ways in which we can bring down the cost of opening the libraries, and basically that would mean then that we could extend the opening without it being the concern that it is at the moment. And I guess that's the point which is sort of sitting behind that in terms of, the book fund is a alternative view. What I would say, and once again, this is something which I said during the consultation piece which we had last week or the week before, that yeah, I am interested in different ideas, and over time I think there probably will come out of a group like this, people that are sort of thinking about it and channeling their energies, ideas which probably haven't occurred to me, haven't occurred to my sort of managers, and if we can pick up on those kind of things, we'll work with you, and if we can change the model, we will do.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add as well that one of the things as well that we've kind of looked at toying with are 24/7 different flexible learning spaces, not just the library, but the possibility of maybe opening different places up across campuses as well. That's something that the officer team and I are quite passionate about trying to investigate, and even I'm sure we'd have that buy-in and support as well, just trying to identify different places, because if the line that we're hearing is that it's too much to open an entire building, why not have those flexible pop-up spaces to cater for those groups that feel that they are being effective?
Is the student space still 24 hours at the moment?
The student space, at the moment, it is coinciding with the library's opening patterns. I have double-checked that at the moment, but I think there was a conversation that it could be opened up, but was it at risk or something, because it's not policed, or there isn't yet CCTV that covers a lot of the area surrounding it as well. So it could be open, but at risk is what we've.
I think if I just clarify what the situation was. Obviously, some of the issue with 24/7 was that there was external security provided as part of that, and that external security company also patrolled the 24-hour student space. So because they're not directly in the Cabman building now, we didn't want to do anything that meant that we'd got an unsafe situation. So we're very happy to look at that, and we'll keep it under review, but we felt the safest option for everybody was to match the hours of the library where there are people around if anybody gets into difficulty.
Okay. There's no way that the security could be moved to that building, so that's where they were based, so they would have to basically go there anyway.
The security company are based where all of the life support systems are, which is accommodation, halls of accommodation, and the lodge on Leek Road currently, because we used to have guards in the library when it was open, and we don't now. So if we move them, it's at considerable risk to the life systems that obviously people are reliant upon. So it's not as easy as just moving somebody's location.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions now. Is that Fee? I can't see you. Yeah, go ahead, Fee.
Most of you up there know me, but there actually is one little statement that for one of the earlier questions that you didn't actually attend on, but I've got a different question. It's about the attendance certificates, is to really make you realise they were not brought in because of the funding of the student funding, but they're brought in on the request of the UKBA, is to police international students. Right. To make sure they attended, and it just come out that there's an easier way to do it, but it still is a way to police the international students to make sure that they come to university, and it sticks to that. But the question I'm asking is, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room, and Bernard knows how passionate I am about the 24/7 library being instrumental in the delivery of this to students a few years ago, and I don't agree with many things that you've said about that. It just seems that you haven't thought about a number of different groups of students. If you take postgraduates, which I am one myself, our hand-in times are totally different to undergraduates. Then you haven't thought about student parents who have different areas that they have to look after first and can only come in when they have time. You've also got, disabled students, who need to learn at different times. They have different learning structures and different ways of working. None of this has been accounted for. And one of the questions we said, you said you come and talk to disabled students. We haven't been approached, and we're part of the disabled forum with the students' union. We haven't been approached. We haven't been, sort of questioned about the stuff. As far as I'm concerned, numbers don't mean a thing. You're there to facilitate a student experience. They are paying £9,000. The government, instead of the government paying, the government now charging interest to students to come to university. And if it helps one student at 4 o'clock in the morning that he can study, that's your job done. Now you're not doing a job, you're not managing the expectations that students have. We was a progressive area with the library. Many universities across this country, and I know that because being with NUS, have actually used this model, and unions have used this model to encourage their universities to open 24/7. It's now gone to a regressive state where you're taking stuff away from students for no reason. You're actually making it harder for them. You're making it harder for postgraduate students to actually do their hand-ins on time. You're making it harder for students on undergrads who have midterm hand-ins. They need this time in the 24/7 library. It's not as simple as you think, it's just a budget. You're talking about the budget, it's looking at the building. The library itself in that building is only a percentage of the whole building. Have you worked out what the percentage of that cost to the whole building? Because as students, we shouldn't be paying for the whole building at night time. We're only using part of it. So, to be honest, you're not managing the expectations of students at all well.
Okay, thanks for that. Can we briefly touch on that? It is a very hot topic at the moment, and I don't just want to dismiss it and say no more questions about the library. I would actually like to hear the views on them points if we can.
I guess to some extent, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree, because I don't feel that I do just look at this in terms of numbers. What I'm looking at is in terms of giving value for the £9,000 which the vast majority of students are paying but are not actually getting any benefit from, in terms of the considerable cost of the security presence. It is the cost of the security presence on its own which actually makes it unviable with the kind of numbers which we are getting and which we have.
So it is a numbers game then, ultimately, isn't it?
No, it's a value game.
Okay, so
yeah. It's about value. That's what I'm concerned.
Value is numbers. That's what it is at the end of the day. It's the bottom line. It is playing a numbers game.
Well, I suppose numbers contribute, but also I think it's a broader piece than that, isn't it? In terms of the fact that what we're trying to do is to not just move to a model where it's purely being driven by numbers, but trying to move to something which is flexible. As I said, I think previously the model which we had before was a numbers game, because it was this is when we open and this is when we close. What we're trying to do now is to flex in to meet the kind of demand which we're getting from most students. And the bottom line is, my view was that that is the best thing to meet the broad student population. However, what I am also saying is that whilst we had to make certain changes initially, I'm more than willing to come back and talk to people, as I say, to find out if we can change the model. But the bottom line is that actually there is a vast number of students who are not really seeing any benefit from a major investment by the university. And that's a problem for us, given the landscape which we're now in terms of fees and all the rest of it.
With the landscape of the education changing, as we stated before though, with 50% of students living closer to university and travelling in, surely the value that you're giving to students with the 24/7 library has now been taken away though. So now students that previously relied on that, even in the minority, surely they're not getting the value for money that the majority would.
But that assumes that money doesn't go elsewhere. There's been no cutbacks in terms of the investment which the university has made. But what it is about is taking that amount of money which is available and spreading it out as best you can to give the best return to students. So yeah, we may be not putting it into this area, but it will have been delivered elsewhere.
Okay, I've literally got 10 minutes
I just
left,
want to
so
change
really
one
quick
thing.
point, please.
You need to look at the changing landscape of higher education. We're not here for a 9-to-5 university or for a 9-to-5 education. We've got too many external pressures on ourselves, and we want an education where we can get it whenever we want.
Okay.
Go on.
So I have to wrap it up. I mean, I would like to take the comment at the back, because it seems to be there was a comment right at the back.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, going on from the value of my £9,000 that I'm spending to be here, one of the reasons I came to Staffordshire was the access to the 24/7 library, And you can just imagine how upset I was when I arrived here and it was like, well, actually, sorry, no, that's not going to be happening. My technology skills are less than zero, and I need to know that if something's going to happen, I need to be able to get to the library at 4 o'clock in the morning to rewrite that essay or to do that preparation work, and now I can't.
So what we're saying is the value isn't just in terms of money, is it? The value is in terms of reputation in the services that we demand of students, isn't it? And I think we've represented that to the panel, and I think it's now up to the university to realise it's their responsibility to provide us with value in many different ways than money. And I hope that that's answering this question is going to take that away with them, and hopefully come up with something for us. It's on their shoulders for us, and I hope they realise that. Okay, I'm going to leave that topic well alone now. Hopefully, has anyone got any other questions?
Chris, gentleman at the back with Deo, who's had his hand up every time we...
Please go ahead.
Basically, I'm one of the student wardens over in Leekwood Halls. The question really is regarding our student comm service that I know that replaced ResNet last year. I just want to make a note really that when I first moved in this year is that I had 5 days of no internet service and had to ring student comm around about 10, 20 times to be basically fobbed off every single time, saying, oh, it's not, we'll get an engineer to report it, and they never phoned back once. And then more recently, which was yesterday actually, is that a colleague of mine rang because she wasn't getting the speeds she was required, and the information given to her was basically, oh, well, go to the library then. And obviously, if we're paying for this service as part of our rent, we shouldn't really be treated like that, because it's an absolute disgrace if we're paying for that. So can I ask the university firstly why the decision was made to go to student comm, and what the university are going to do in regards to the customer service that we're receiving, because it's not just me and my colleague that are getting this, it's across the board that we're being treated like this.
Is that an information services remit? That's you, is it?
Me, probably, yeah.
Okay.
Hi. We made the decision, it was a joint decision really between ourselves as accommodation and IS to outsource the provision of ResNet to get you a better managed service, a better help desk. Clearly, from what you've said, that's not always happening. So I will take that personally back to student comm. We do have SLAs with them. We are assured of excellent customer service. So if that's not the experience you're getting, please let us know about it. Have you told your halls managers or Yvonne Boyko? Okay, well, I'll pick that up with them, because we have regular client meetings. That's another benefit of having a contract with somebody, and SLAs that we need them to fulfil. So leave that one with me, and I'll feed back to you independently.
Thank you, Linda. That's very straightforward. Thank you. I believe there's a young man. Is that a young man with a hand at the back?
I think so.
Hi, yeah, I'm also a student warden. I've been in halls 2 years in my job. Just at Alex's point with the student comm, there's a facility there that a student can actually buy extra bandwidth with the internet. And what we actually found out is for various students who paid £60 extra, including their rent, they didn't actually receive that product at all.
Okay, once
they
again,
paid for it and nothing happened. So that is incredible.
It's the first I've heard about it, so I'm sorry if if I should have known about it. It hasn't been fed back to me. You know how to contact me. Please send me an email directly, and I'll take that up on behalf of you and the others who have experienced that.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Right, I want to get this gentleman over here if I can. I'm trying to spread out as evenly as I can, really.
I'm a sports student at the university. I've been here about 3 years now. I was just wondering, because the sports facilities that are currently here are a bit outdated. I know that the sports centre has had a bit of a refurbish with the change rooms and toilets, but are there any plans on actually improving or adding new facilities to the actual sports parts, i.e. another sports hall or anything like that?
Yeah, hi, that's me again. Sports centres in my gang. We would really love to be able to invest in sports facilities. We were very pleased to get the changing rooms done, which I hope everybody agrees was a massive improvement. We have, as a university, a sports management board now, which has executive sponsorship, so sport has taken on a much greater profile within the university generally. But what we're doing is we're working alongside Duncan and the estates team, because whatever we do in terms of a sports strategy needs to really align to the work that's being being done on the estate strategy. So we're working very hard, but we're well aware of the need to improve and expand our facilities. So I really hope that that's something we'll be able to look at in conjunction with the wider estate strategy work. So we're listening and we know the problems.
Yeah, it's just that with obviously I'm speaking on a few people on the course that couldn't be actually here today, but they've actually commented on saying that that obviously when we do our practical sessions, that we're actually told by tutors as well. We advise you just to do your sessions obviously outside because one, obviously in the sports centre the acoustics are pretty poor, and obviously the flooring as well. It's not actually up to date flooring as well, and I know myself because I actually dance president at the union. We train in the activities room, and the activities room flooring is actually pretty poor compared to other studios around in the area. It just obviously just seems a bit neglected, in other words. So
I absolutely understand the point that you're making. We're well aware of the issues, and as I say, we'll be working closely with the estates team. If there is things that we can do more immediately, then we absolutely will. We're obviously in the middle of the new year. We have budgets that we can look at. We have to prioritise those things. But I would just say keep feeding back to us. The more that we know about and the more people can tell us, then the more chance we've got of addressing them.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that's... Yep, go ahead. I think it's Anna in front of me. I am. Go on.
Well, just to build upon sort of sports facilities, I've become aware that the sports playing field, which is right by the allotments, gets, they get their windows smashed in basically from loads of stuff being chucked over. One guy's had 7, changes of glass in his greenhouse, and some of them hurl abuse and get abuse hurled back at them from crazy fox lady. And I wondered if anything was going to be moved around sort of sports-wise, because they also climb straight through the fence and go into public
Who is
property.
This is, I think, Dave Orman, who's head of the Student Enabling Centre, brought this to me just literally in the last week or so.
He's on the ball.
So, yeah, because the allotments are suffering from
so that's something that's been dealt
damage, really as a result of teams that are using the sports field in close proximity and not being respectful of their neighbours, I think, to put it politely, but it's being dealt with.
All right, good. Go see someone else quick.
Okay. I'm literally... Is that you, Fiona?
Can I really quickly just add as well, sorry, really quickly to Anne's point, that's something that can very quickly be remedied as well if we can identify the teams that play at those particular points. We can obviously, we have that engagement just to say
okay. I'm running short of time, that's why I'm... go ahead.
This question's to Steve, actually. You just talked about the Staffordshire Graduate, but a lot of students don't realise what that means to them. They get told a bit, but they don't understand it.
Right.
A lot of mature students come to this university with aspects of that already installed in the way they are. Are there ways of the university accrediting these aspects of their life and their learnings beforehand to actually help them? Because this would then help with the NSS and stuff like that. But with the NSS, and this is to the officers as well, there is a big movement to get rid of the NSS at the moment, because it's counted that universities are just using it for the league table and to say they're better than everybody else and not taking any notice of the negative and just the positive.
You're absolutely right. I wouldn't say that we're doing that much, but it is actually being strategically managed, should we say, because there's a number of indicators in a league table, and some of them you can manage and some you can't. So that is happening. In terms of the replacement to NSS, which I think is likely to be very positive, I think, because it's about student engagement surveys, which are being used in Australia, South Africa, United States, and it tells you far more about what students value about their experience rather than a very dull and blunt NSS. Is that fairly clear, my position on this? The other thing about the Staffordshire Graduate, you're right, it's been running really for 1 year, and there are groups in the university who really don't recognise it, and I include staff in that as well. And what we've got is coming up this year a very clear campaign, if you want to call it that, to get the message across. And that's working with the Students' Union as well. And we'll be meeting with Director of Marketing fairly soon, just to devise a way where that message can get through. Ironically, I think the message gets outside more easily than inside, you know, because it's being used as a USP and all the rest of it. So, but I think there's a lot of work, you're quite right. And we're doing far more than lots of other universities in terms of embedding graduate attributes. If you look at any university website, they've got graduate attributes. We're actually embedding it in the programs that you study. It's not just an empty rhetoric. And in terms of the other bit about accrediting other activities, we are certainly looking at that, and a number of the universities are doing things like, I think it's Manchester Met's got an employability passport which accredits activities, and I think we need to look at that very seriously, particularly in the case of the education academic record, which will be widespread in the next year or so. So all those things are good, and we are working to address a number of them.
Okay, thank you very much.
So really quickly, can I add? Sorry, I keep being the really annoying person at the end. But I think obviously, like in terms of graduate attributes, there's still work to be done. We've identified that and here as well. But with the NSS, the negative comments have absolutely been picked up upon through the blueprint. It's not like we just turned around and sort of turned a blind eye towards it. We are actively working towards and holding each other to account to make sure that things are as should be for students. It's not all about positive, it's negatives too, and that's what we're here to do, to be like, keep on top of it.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to deal literally in 2 minutes with the young lady at the back's question. I literally only got 2 minutes, so if we could deal with it briefly. Go ahead.
I hope you have enough time. I want you to talk about the accommodation, or well, ask about it is probably more accurate. I can understand that there would be a variation of standards across the accommodation that staff supply. But even though I'm paying near enough £4,000 a year to live in Clariscliffe Court, I have had quite a few problems, especially considering dust, because I'm allergic to it. And every time I've inquired over the past 3 weeks, probably about 3 or 4 times now, I've either not heard anything back, or the woman I spoke to yesterday actually got quite rude with me, saying that I should just close my window, even though when my window's open and the dust billows through the curtains. And she said that everything gets clean during the summer holidays, and it's obviously not happening because the amount of dust.
So accommodation,
is ridiculous.
cleaning and standards is what you're asking at. Can we quickly touch on that, please?
Well, rather than sort of try and pick up a specific issue now, I'd be really happy if you'd send me an email and let me deal with you direct, if that's okay, and I can pick up on the specifics of your issue.
Thanks, yeah, that's
Would you like to quickly comment on the cleaners, the cleaners that have no longer clean in the accommodation?
Well, we are in a transitional period with our halls cleaning arrangements. It's something that we haven't implemented our new regime fully yet either, because we're in consultation with the team. So I think once we get towards the end of this calendar year and we have our new team of halls assistants in place, then that will start to improve things, and we'll start to work much closer with people. But please send me that email, and I'll talk to you directly offline about how we can manage your issue.
I will definitely, thanks.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everyone on the panel for coming, and I'd like to thank you all for coming in this horrible weather. Please keep coming, make these a success. They really do make a difference. It's our voice that's being heard. I've run over by 5 minutes, so I'm likely to be having a telling off. But I'm pretty sure that all the panel will be happy to wander around and answer any questions for the next 5 or 10 minutes. I'm sure that won't be too much issue. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's all right. We're stuck now.
I'll go first.